Finding a guitar that feels and sounds right for you is not easy. Even expert professionals, when evaluate a top-end guitar, are often strongly influenced by minor factors and misled by false elements of judgment. I call these distracting factors the enemies of the guitar player. We are going to see what I consider the 7 main enemies or threats that tend to distort our judgment when we are looking for a guitar. Wait, I know what you are thinking. There are already many videos on this same subject. Whether you are a beginner or an expert, I'm sure I will surprise you with interesting considerations no one talks about. I will largely refer to electric solid bodies, but most of what I'm saying also applies to basses, acoustic and classical guitars. Disclaimer: some unpopular statements are coming. Please subscribe to BTR, the channel with cherry sunburst frame, always based on documented first-hand information and serious original content. In the last episode, BTR number 54, we have seen 7 important qualities that, in my opinion, define great guitar tone. Let's move on. We are on the market for a guitar. Our priority is guitar tone excellence. What are the distracting elements that tend to distort our judgment? Let's see the 7 big enemies of the guitar player, threats you have to face when you evaluate the purchase of an instrument. If you are on the market for a high-quality guitar, I believe that great tone should be your priority. In this case, I'm convinced that your enemy number 1 is the look or color of the instrument. Please never choose a guitar or bass for its color or look. Unless you are very lucky, that's the best way to pick a mediocre sounding instrument. Don't get me wrong, we all suffer some vanity and want to look cool on stage. None of us is insensitive to the fascination of a guitar with a captivating look. Nevertheless, at the end of the day, a guitar is made to play and will be remembered for its sound. The look won't be of any help for your music or for the quality of your tone. A fancy color will not improve your playing, not in a live performance, and certainly not in a studio recording. For instance, a reliquing job or aging process of the finish can affect dramatically the price of the instrument. Honestly, I don't see the point in paying big extra money only to fake a vintage look. Other example, once I tried a 1963 Fender Stratocaster in stunning Fiesta Red finish, and another time I played a 1965 SG Standard in gorgeous cherry red color and awesome mint conditions. These are some of the most beautiful guitars I've ever seen. Unfortunately, their sound was nothing special, not even close to so many other vintage guitars I've played. I read an article of an expert American vintage guitars dealer where he said that his customers were missing the best cherry sunburst Les Pauls because their main concern was the look of the flamed maple top. Other example, typically the body of a Telecaster is made of ash wood. Fender in the 1960s used the standard blonde color on ash bodies and sunburst finish or fancy custom colors on alder bodies which required less coats of paint. Therefore, in this case, different colors involve that different woods were used, making a relevant difference in tone. Also, colors may differ significantly in composition. For example, some are made with more desirable nitrocellulose lacquer, and others with polyurethane paint. I could go on with many more examples. In sum, I strongly recommend to choose a guitar for its tone and the way it fits your music style. More than welcome if it also happens to have a cool look. Enemy number 2. Output volume or loudness. At first, a loud output volume could be very impressive, especially with an acoustic guitar. At a deeper examination, strong output volume just doesn't mean good sound. For example, expert pickup winders know that overwound pickups may sound powerful and impressive, but as a trade-off they pay a tribute to the quality of tone. So try not to be impressed by the output power and focus on the sound quality. More in general, with quality gear, you should never rush to judgment. Some guitars impress promptly for the striking sonic impact of their tone. Some others are like old boxers. At first might seem more laid back, but in a second time they reveal more important qualities that don't show up immediately. They win over the long distance. The third error that many players do when evaluating a guitar on the market is being misled by its current conditions. Let's imagine that you are interested in buying a good used car. You find one particularly nice, but it has worn-out tires, a dead battery, and a pair of blown-out light bulbs. Would you ever judge the car by these issues? Would you consider these deal breakers? Very probably the car still is a good deal, even if you have to change the battery, the bulbs and the tires. In the same way, don't overlook a guitar just because it needs some work to get back on track. Maybe a beat-up instrument only needs a new set of strings and a proper setup, or it could need fret leveling or a checkup of the electronics. In every case, any good old guitar will come back to a new life after some care. Also, the tone can improve dramatically with pickup regulations, truss rod adjustment, and so on. Learn with experience a critical approach. Don't be misled by the current conditions of the instrument. Even more than that, in my experience, for several reasons, a beat instrument that has been on the road always sounds much better than an original minty guitar kept in the case for years. In essence, always give a second chance to old guitars that may appear in poor conditions, especially vintage instruments with modifications or even repairs. That's usually a good way to get a great sounding guitar at bargain price. Enemy number 4. Myth of playability. I see so many players approaching guitars with prejudice. Many guitarists tend to be picky about the fatness of the neck or the shape of the body, or they worry too much about the height of the action, the length of the scale, the wideness of the nut, the gauge of the strings, the radius of the fretboard, the dimensions of the frets, and so on. Just play the damn guitar. Seriously, we all have playing preferences, and some guitars accommodate our preferences more than others, making us perfectly comfortable. On the other hand, any guitar needs a little adaptation time or little effort to fully connect. Once more, before jumping to rushed conclusions, you have to embrace the construction philosophy of the instrument. I have 2 guitars with baseball bat necks, and I love them. My old 60s Telecasters and my SG have slim necks, and I love them. I have an ES335 with Bigsby tailpiece, and I love it. A Les Paul with wraparound bridge, and I love it as well. A new guitar leads to different approaches and different sounds, which is artistically inspiring and stimulating. For a player, this is the point of having more than one guitar. Sticking with your routine or comfort zone can be self-limiting and often leads to cliché and banality. Also, there's a close relation or connection with the previous point. A guitar with a horrible setup and worn-out frets may result unplayable, but this does not necessarily mean that it's a bad guitar. Enemy number 5, another tough one: sentimental value. Always be self-critical about your tone and be prepared to question your gear. Being emotionally attached to your guitar can be a beautiful romantic feeling, especially when the instrument was given by or inherited from a dear person. But if we are talking about guitar tone, are you so sure that your instrument is an ideal arrival point? Or is your sentiment stopping your potential for growth? If you want or need to buy a guitar that fits better your artistic needs, unless you are very rich, you may have to make a choice. You may need to sacrifice your current guitar, even if you have an emotional attachment to it. My friend Gianni used to quote a Latin saying, ubi maior, minor cessat, meaning, if you can get a better guitar, the one you have loses relevance or interest. In fact, I warmly recommend to concentrate your economic resources on a few high-quality instruments, rather than wasting energy on many cheaper guitars. I've seen people collecting dozens of useless junk guitars. Any good artisan knows that you need a single set of high-quality tools, well built for their intended purpose. Many cheaper, less efficient tools are only a waste of time and money. In addition, excessive attachment could lead to the so-called sour grape effect. This expression refers to an Aesop fable. A hungry fox tries to eat grapes from a vine but cannot reach them. Rather than admitting his failure, he says that the grapes are not good. In our case, I mean that if you are too attached to your instrument, you may disdain or overlook instruments that would deserve all your attention and admiration. Basically, you have to recognize the value of other gear and accept when it's time to move over, even if that requires stretch and effort. Enemy number 6. Myth of lightweight. Do lightweight guitars always sound better than heavier ones? Unfortunately, it's not as simple as that. Every one of us tends to prefer lightweight guitars. However, lightweight does not necessarily indicate better tone. Many guitars from the early 1970s have a great tone, even if they are on the heavy side. You need to evaluate instruments on an individual basis. There are no surefire formulas. Which brings us to enemy number 7, theory of guitar making. When choosing a guitar, I would not get hung up on construction techniques, materials, technical details and formulas. Leo Fender and Nat Daniels of Dan Electro have built timeless classics in spite of any traditional rule of guitar building. Dan Armstrong made excellent guitars with plexiglass bodies. On the other hand, people who tried to design super guitars with complex software and calculations have failed miserably to create interesting instruments. Also, there are no recognizable patterns in wood grain or rules in wood's arrangement that prove to be consistently better than others. Just rely on your fingers and you trust your ears. Remember that a guitar cannot be bad if it plays and sounds right. Before proceeding with more important thoughts on our enemies, let me show you two powerful allies. For the recordings of the BTR channel, I'm using a pair of brand new T-Bone studio microphones. The SCT-2000 is the flagship of the T-Bone large diaphragm line. Its tube circuit has very warm sound. The switchable polar pattern makes it suitable for most recording applications. I'm pairing it with the T-Bone RB770, an octave ribbon microphone ideal for electric guitar amp recording. These two microphones complement well each other. I will better clarify choice and recording technique in the next episodes. As you can hear, these microphones have outstanding quality and, good news, they won't break your bank account. Please note, if you buy these microphones or anything else you wish through the Thomann affiliate link in the description, you will support the Bob Stone Review channel at no additional cost. For the overdriven tones, I'm relying on a cool Sonic Cake Blue Screamer. This inexpensive little stump box has 100% analog circuit with dual mode operation and true bypass switch. It boasts responsive dynamics with a great touch feeling and typical old school tone. Highly recommended. To add real spring reverb to my 1961 Tremolax, as always, I'm using my trusty Surfy Industries Surfy Bear Classic with matching blonde Telex covering. We have seen 7 enemies of the guitar player. Some people point out another threat, potentially misleading our judgment. Big brand names. They got a point there. In fact, minor and aftermarket brands usually offer better value for the money than leading or established brands, especially in the low and medium market segments. It's no news that some guitars made in Japan by Orville, Tokai, Edwards or Burney are better than some of their original American counterparts. Anyway, I choose not to list big brand names as one of the enemies for 3 reasons. The first reason is that leading brands are not a scam. Often their quality lives up to their name. Indicating leading brands as enemies of a quality choice would be unfair and simplistic at the least. The best guitars often have a famous brand on the headstock, especially in the high-end market segment. The second reason is that given the same quality and price, a big brand guitar will be a better investment. It will have a higher resale value, which is a factor not to be overlooked. Finally, the wide majority of the production from minor brands have non-original design. They are usually uglier copies of popular instruments from major brands, in which case I still tend to prefer the originals. Of course, there are plenty of brilliant exceptions, companies producing guitars with beautiful exclusive design. Nevertheless, in the past decades, there was more creativity. Even minor brands used to produce interesting instruments with original design and personal solutions. More about this in one of the next episodes. Please subscribe now and click the bell to keep posted. As I mentioned, I made some unpopular statements, so please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to check out the links in the description, Bobstone Review Facebook group and Instagram profile.